Hello. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Sun and Moon. This is the June 8th Dharma Talk. I am Chris Clardy, subbing for Annie. Alex subbed last week. And we'll probably get started in about 1 minute. Welcome and namaste. Before I try to do anything, before I start talking and doing things, I thought we should take a moment to get comfortable. Maybe you rushed to get to this meeting, rushed to the computer. Maybe the computer was annoying. Maybe you thought you could sit in this position, but turns out you need more things. Let's begin with support for the physical body. And after that support for the physical body, the slowing and settling occurs, allowing room for a breath, we can find comfort in the breath body. Allow there to be a moment for a cycling between the physical body and the breath body, so that as you care for one, the other reinforces it. Feeling comfort, letting go, and letting go again. It's my pleasure to lead our meeting, but really, you're leading the way for yourself. There's a little secret pause between when we center and when the facilitator starts talking in a Dharma talk. This is it. A little secret surprise space, spaciousness, space of nothing. We're here, we're settled. Maybe we've let go of some expectations. And we really need these kind of pauses. Why is the pause so powerful? When we sit for meditation, we talk a lot about anchors. And I feel like the pause is a really great anchor. Just like ships have anchors, boats have anchors. They bob in the water. They move along with the currents. They're going up and down, but they have something stable that is either very heavy, a heavy anchor, or something that's rooted, something that has caught in the bottom depths of the ocean. And there's something stable that is anchoring the boat. It may change directions. It may flow back and forth, but it always has that root. And when the sailors are ready, they can take the anchor up and go on to the next voyage. So when we sit to meditate, we talk about anchors. Particularly in the mindfulness meditation that many of us are practicing and aware of now, with the teachings of Thich Nhat Hanh and Tara Brach and some of the others. We are really looking for that sense of rootedness and steadiness. And this can give us a break in between big events, in between decisions. And that's important. Whether they are big decisions or small decisions, being able to have some spaciousness between them is what we know as a scientifically proven efficacious way to calm our nervous system. So, in this interesting way, we in our Western Americanized uh, selves have come to become more comfortable with some of the meditative aspects of Buddhism and other traditions that sit in contemplation. Um, so our teachers encourage us to find an anchor, um, anything that will help us be here now. Ram Dass, the book that he published based on the teachings that he gave or that he received, was called "Be Here Now," and it has become a really great mantra for us as we go along this path of meditation. So tonight, let's take a moment and anchor. Um, feel your hands. Maybe they're touching fabric or each other. Maybe they feel heavy. Feel your breath go in and out. You might label the breath as it moves in and moves out. Sounds can be an anchor as well. The sound of my voice. Not my voice making sense or creating meaning necessarily, but just as a sound that comes in and comes out. Feeling the hands, naming the breath, listening for sounds. Whatever's in the room with you right here and right now. If your eyes have closed, you might welcome the sensation of rest in the upper and lower eyelids and the jaw. And even these touch points can become anchors. Alex Levin, one of my favorite teachers, has a 3-point anchor that I learned from her: ground, sound, and breath. Feel the ground. Listen for a sound. Breathe in, breathe out. Ground, sound, and breath. Ground, sound, and breath. So you won't hear the sound of my voice for a few minutes as we experience these anchors: hands, feet, seat, present moment awareness becoming available. When a wave comes that knocks the boat, return to the anchor. Return again and again. Notice the difference between that feeling of being lost in a story and coming back to present moment awareness. This is what the sages tell us is our true home. the gold, as it were. Tara Brach has the title of her book, Trusting the Gold, Uncovering Your Natural Goodness. So you might remain comfortable and anchored this way and slowly open the eyes if they were closed. And the thing I thought I would mention is that even if some of those anchors are familiar and some of these concepts are familiar, they don't always work. Um, for those of us who have a more routine practice or have been trying to, I mean, that's what practice is, right? We just do it again and again, see what happens, try to get better. We know that that feeling of goodness, that gold, doesn't always emerge. Sometimes when we do the breath, we take the seat, we do the breath, we find the anchor, and it's like the anchor is just not heavy enough, or it comes loose, and the storm is just too big, or there's too many of them. Sometimes as we look around, we can't see the shore. We just don't have a sense of being in one place at one time. And and that does happen. Sometimes the breath thing doesn't work when you're out and about during the day. To say otherwise is just magical thinking, right? We have to acknowledge that the reason we practice these things is because we need the practice. Someone once told me, "Oh, I, I, I'm not going to do yoga. I'm not flexible enough to do that." And the teacher's response in the class, overhearing that, was, "Well, that's like saying you're too dirty to take a shower. You like if you're not flexible, you're the person who might benefit from it." So we definitely come back and back and back to the seat of the meditation. And sometimes it feels really good. And sometimes that just escapes us. Um, Sometimes the weather that normally comes and goes seems like it's never going to stop. And it just becomes a big sucking whirlpool. Um, I'm thinking of when I used to teach the Odyssey, and Odysseus is on his journey and he gets stuck between 2 points in the journey. One is the monster Scylla, who's has all these heads and is going to snatch up um, sailors from his boat, and the other is Charybdis, and it's the swirling whirlpool that just will suck someone down into the very pit of nothingness, I guess. Um, and we know that these challenges do exist on the journey. Very often, when we encounter that kind of stuff, the very first thing that we try to do is survive. And sometimes that means looking for a place to control, right? Looking for the anchor. And when it's not there, um, maybe blaming someone, maybe blaming ourselves. Sometimes the control might come from ego blossoming into busyness and anything that will help us hide or escape from that narrow channel between Scylla and Charybdis. Anything that helps us feel like we are in control when things are really, really out of control. That's normal. That's natural. The trick, of course, for us is to notice that that's going on. We do notice when things don't feel right. We tend to notice when we are overwhelmed and not sleeping. We tend to notice these things, and that's okay. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're not okay. It's actually a little counterintuitive. But the good news is, I think, once we acknowledge that we can't control the weather, it means that we don't have to. And our purview of responsibility becomes more manageable. And we do re-enter a sense of being in control and balanced and anchored. So there's this paradox that happens when we let go, when we acknowledge that we are not the the provider of weather, we're not the planner of weather. We might be a drop in the ocean, we might be a boat on the ocean, but we're certainly not the person that's making it all go around. The other part of that good news, I think, in lessening the purview of our real responsibility, it enlivens the things that we do. It makes them um, it makes them take on massive value. So even something small like, will I drive through McDonald's to get French fries and a Diet Coke, or will I not? That's a big decision. I do that. It's like a little treat that I do for myself. And I have to decide if I'm going to do it or not do it. It's a decision and it's a big deal because that might not be the best choice. I want to be aware of making it. Sometimes the choices are much bigger. Um, will I have a conversation with a person in my life that's a difficult conversation to have? And if if I'm going to do that, when will that be? What will I bring to it? How can I plan for it? Um, what work will I do? If one of the hallmarks of uh, trying to fight against a lack of control is entering into this ego busyness, how do I distinguish that between my svadharma, my personal contribution to the harmony and the forward fullness, the fullness coming to fruition of the universe. I know I need to take part in that. Am I just being busy? It's very easy to for those fine lines to start to get crossed. And I think that the more often that we can acknowledge we're not in charge of the big things, the easier it will be for us to put value on the things that we do. And that is part of how we become beloved to ourselves. Um, we have a lot of nurses in our family, and we have one person in our family who's also suffering from a chronic illness that has worsened. And one of the nurses in our family, she's my sister in law, she traveled quite a ways to this ill family member and did a lot of caregiving, both in the hospital and at home, and really was there in a way that other people in the family might not have been able to do because she's a nurse. And she was talking about it later, and she said, very emotionally, she's like 50, she's a grown lady. I feel like all my training, everything I've done has led to this. All my training as a nurse has led to this particular moment of caregiving for our relative. And I propose that that's true for all of us. That everything that we're doing, all the practice that we're doing, all the training that we're doing, it does go toward a moment that we were made for. Um, allowing each moment to become a choice, a decision, might seem like a burden. But again, these are the small quotidian things that make up our day and opportunities for us to find the gold, um, to take care, to try again. And that's, I think, what we're going to look at a little bit more closely as we take a next pause here. Um, looking at what happens when the waves do get big and we can't really find the anchor um, during a meditation specifically. We know that happens in life. But tonight I thought we would take a look at what to do when that happens in a meditation. Um, experienced sailors have the ability to use not one but two anchors. They can put two anchors on one end of the boat so that it's very anchored, and the boat then is anchored so that it can so the water flows around it. They can also put an anchor on either side of the boat, especially if they're in a harbor or in a river, and that helps them um, not sway back around with the currents. So I'd like to offer another anchor, a particular hand gesture, a mudra that we might try as we uh, take our next quiet moments here. Our hands are an immediate anchor. They're with us. If we're lucky to have our hands, we can use them as anchors. And neurologically, proportionately, they contain the hands and the feet and the tongue contain the bulk of the nerves in our body. So when we translate that into brain activity, when we work with our hands, we're actually reaching very deeply into the nervous system, which, as we know, is the scientific piece of what we're doing when we meditate, looking for that hormonal rebalance in the autonomic nervous system that gives our bodies a break between fight, flight, freeze, um, and allowing us to come to rest and digest and tend and befriend. So if you have a mudra, if you have a hand gesture that you like, you can use that. I'll show you one that I really like for grounding. You'll take your hands with your palms facing you and thread the fingers together. And as they come together, the middle fingers, everything's tucked on the inside. The pointer and the thumb create a shape a little bit like an anchor. It's kind of a triangle, kind of a square. So all the fingers are threaded and tucked in, and then we have the pointers touching and the thumbs touching. And then this shape rests right in your lap and kind of with the pointers pointing down. Let the hands rest there. So you might try that as we sit here and consider the next meditative moment. Since we have this new anchor, we might experiment a little bit with some intentional item in our lives that's a little bit of an annoyance. Bring to mind something that seems annoying, not something really big. We're practicing right now. So, for example, to use myself as an example, I have noticed lately that I find it really hard to go to my yoga mat at home for my personal practice at home and do yoga on the mat by myself. I'm just really avoiding it. And I'm finding it annoying that I'm finding it that I'm avoiding it. So that's what I'm working with right now. Maybe there's something like that for you. Maybe there's a little quirk or a little something that's going on. Maybe it's not something that you're doing or not doing. Maybe it's something someone else is doing or not doing. Something kind of little, someone forgetting to do their trash cans. Um, you know, the item. Let's just call it the item. Think of the item. And as we ground, finding the anchor in the bodies, listening for sound, feeling the hands, taking a breath. Bring to mind the item, the annoyance. And we always try to begin in the body. Notice if this task is in itself an annoyance. Did you come with the expectation of release and surrender and gold? So maybe there's some tension in the jaw. Or if you're thinking of something from your life off the cushion, notice if there are any bodily sensations that come there. Catch of breath, rolling the eyes. Feel the ground. Listen for sound. Breath. Feel your hands. And then after noticing, can you move toward that discomfort? If there's tension in the jaw, let your attention stay there. See what it feels like to have tension. Almost as if it were a grain of sand stuck inside the shell of an oyster. Covering it with layers, soft, pliable, comforting. So that this annoyance becomes the object of care and attention. And in the way that a grain of sand eventually becomes a pearl. This place of annoyance, whether it's something in the body or in a relationship, or in a behavior. Cover it with layers of your personal compassion and attention. As many times as you find the thing emerging as an annoyance, even fresh discomfort, as many times as that happens, add another layer of dressing, another coverlet, another layer of pearl, so that we soothe not only the body but the mind. Soothing all the thoughts, all the interruptions. And perhaps we let this unwanted thing become the beloved thing. Through that act of willingness, self-care, and compassion, you can be both the giver and receiver. The teacher Eric Schiffman says, stillness is not the absence or negation of energy, life, or movement. Stillness is dynamic. It is unconflicted movement, life in harmony with itself, skill in action. It can be experienced whenever there is total, uninhibited, unconflicted participation in the moment you are in, when you are wholeheartedly present with whatever you are doing. Be still here. Feel the anchor of the hands. Notice the weather coming, the dynamic movement that can be unconflicted movement. In the same way that the boat allows the water to flow under and around, we can be in full participation in this moment, remaining anchored, encompassing the discomfort, the less mindful moments, bringing them into the boat. No matter how often they return. If you'd like to deepen the breath and open the eyes if they were closed. My son had to hear news from me the other day about car insurance. And I knew he wasn't going to like to hear this news, but I told him anyway. And it was something that was his fault. So I prefaced the whole thing by saying, I don't want to make you feel bad. I'm not telling you this information to make you feel bad or to emphasize blame about what you did. But you just kind of need to know that this is happening and this is the way car insurance works. And I just think you should know. So I wondered later, why do I think he needs to know that? Well, because he's growing up and he's going to have a life and there's cars and there's insurance. And I finally told him, I think what I'm doing is giving you a little life vaccine. And this is just a little thing that's going to be important later, and you need to understand it. You need to kind of get the car insurance in order. And he laughed, and I was relieved because I wasn't sure how that conversation was going to go. But that's a lot like what we do when we care for ourselves. We notice the thing that isn't going well, and we allow it to be, and we include it. So when we sit and when we notice things that aren't going well, distraction or discomfort, that's a chance. That's a little life vaccine. That's a little chance to scoop that up, move toward it, and know that that is part of our training that will lead us into the moment, just like my sister-in-law felt so gratified to be present in her professional capacity for our ill family member. We don't know what part of our training is going to be the most important. But to go back to the good news of earlier, it's all those little things that have that potential. So each moment is imbued with a sense of accomplishment, a sense of opportunity. Even the smallest things that we can consider as part of our inheritance, as part of our belovedness, becomes rolled into the next moment and the next moment and the next moment and the next moment. Each moment precipitates and prepares us for the next one. We were made for this moment, and we were made for this moment, and we were made for the next moment as well. So I would like to close by, first of all, saying thank you for uh, your practice. I would like to dedicate the merit of our practice, not only to the well being of ourselves, but to all beings, knowing that when we take the time to do the practice, to go to the mat, even when it's not perfect, um, we are entering that zone of yoga, that zone of skill in action, that zone of trying to unify the things that seem a little misaligned. Um, we were made to be courageous. We were made for each and every moment. I hope that each of you finds the anchor that works in your next meditation. I'll show you the one that we used again tonight, threading the fingers together and then rolling the palms together, the pointer and the thumb meeting, and this shape just rests in the lap. These points of contact bringing some relief not only to the nervous system, but to that sense of being in the present moment, knowing that each moment is part of a larger story, individual, and yet woven in to all the moments around it. Thank you. And namaste.